So let me offer you one final thing in this tape, and it's maybe the best element of the things we've talked about thus far. And that is this. We've talked about the fact that what we focus on is what we get, and that questions, the quality of the questions we ask ourselves, basically determines the quality of our life. A long time ago, I realized that problems were going to be coming up on an ongoing basis if I was going to deal with a large number of people and expect to do a lot in my life. So I decided to develop a series of questions that I could use to take myself from feeling like I had a problem that was overwhelming me into a place of creating solutions. So I developed 5 questions, and I call them my problem-solving questions. And you might want to jot these down, even stop the tape one after another, and make sure you get them down in your notes. By applying these 5 questions, for myself at least, I've been able to deal with things that used to absolutely devastate me and actually turn them around into something that I really began to enjoy. In presenting to you these 5 problem-solving questions, I want you to know they can work for really big problems or for small ones. One thing that's important to remember is this. Small problems seem big very often, don't they? So dealing with the size of a problem doesn't matter. This system will work for anything. Let me give you a simple example. I remember one time I came back from a seminar tour where I'd done approximately 25 seminars in about 27, 28 days. And to say the least, I was a bit physically burnt out. And I came back and I felt like I'd not really had any space or time. And I don't know if you've ever been in that place, but that's where I was. And I came home and found 100 messages, just under 100 to be accurate, that I personally was supposed to respond to. That was not all the hundreds of calls that had come in that other people had handled for me. These were people that had to speak to me personally. Now, you talk about stress. When I saw this list and thought, I'm only going to be home for about 48 hours, and this is what I got to do on top of everything else, I went nuts. I started to feel angry inside. Why? I asked myself lousy questions. Questions like, how come I have to do this? How come I never have any space? I don't have any time at all. Pretty soon whipped myself into a real good frenzy. Now, the bottom line is, I realize that's not going to support my life. Fortunately, though, now I have a system for dealing with it. And anytime I start to get upset, anytime I start to get hooked by a problem, these are the 5 questions I ask. Question number 1, what's great about this? Well, my first response is nothing. So then I modify the question and say, well, what could be great about this? And what I do is make myself answer the question. So what could be great about this? And I thought, well, what could be great is, if I really think about it, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, I probably would have begged to have people like this calling and wanting to talk to me personally, especially 100. I mean, my gosh, these are movers and shakers, and they got to talk to me and nobody else. They need decisions from me that can make a major difference. That's pretty darn exciting. That began to change my state immediately. My second question that I ask is, what's not perfect yet? Now take a good listen to that. What's not perfect yet? Remember we talked about presuppositions earlier when we talked about questions? What does that question presuppose? The answer is pretty simple. It presupposes that it's going to be perfect. That's kind of nice, isn't it? Isn't that different than what's the problem? It changes your state immediately. So I said, what's not perfect yet? My answer was, well, what's not perfect yet is, even though I've got all these great people calling me, I don't have quite enough time for my own personal life. Third question, what am I willing to do to make it the way I want it? Again, what am I willing to do to make it the way I want it? Now again, listen to the presupposition here. What am I willing to do to make it the way I want it presupposes that I'm, 1, willing to do something about it, and that I can. Those are pretty good ways to look at the world. And so what happens is it gets me to focus on some solutions. So my brain said, what am I willing to do to make it the way I want it? And I thought, well, I'm willing to find a way to make the calls because these people deserve to have an answer. And I'm willing to change my schedule and my life so that I have more time for myself. I'm the one responsible and I can create it. Question 4, what am I willing to no longer do in order to have things the way I want them? Well, when I thought about that, I thought, well, I'm willing to no longer complain about the situation when I'm the one who set it up. I'm willing to no longer put myself in a position where I have to answer all of these calls. I'm going to develop a different strategy where more of these people can be handled by someone else. And finally, the 5th question, probably the most important one out of the list. How can I do what's necessary to get this job done and enjoy the process? Critical question. Because what happened when I asked it of myself is I said, how can I get this job done? How can I return all these calls and enjoy the process? My brain immediately got an answer because I asked a good question. My brain said, hey, you own a jacuzzi. You haven't been in the thing for 6 months. Why don't you take the telephone outside, take your computer with you, turn on the jacuzzi, get in, and make your calls from there and be a true Californian. That's exactly what I did, and I had a blast. I sat out there and called people and said, hey, how you doing? I'm calling you from my jacuzzi. What are you doing working for a living? And I harassed people and teased them and absolutely had fun. I made all the calls. In fact, I wanted more. I made it through all of them. Couldn't reach a lot of people, so I started looking to see if there's anybody else to call. See, here's the key. You and I have the resources in our lives to figure out how to enjoy anything. The problem is we don't ask the right questions. I took myself from a place of absolute overwhelm to a place of getting the job done and enjoying it through asking 5 questions. It'll work for virtually anything. So here's your assignment for today. Jot down the 5 problem-solving questions. Here they are. Number 1, what's great about this or what's good about this? And if your brain goes nothing, say, well, what could be great about it? Question 2, what's not perfect yet? Presupposing it's going to be perfect. Question 3, what am I willing to do to make it the way I want it? Question 4, what am I willing to no longer do in order to make things the way I want them? And question number 5, how can I do what's necessary to get this job done and enjoy the process? Write down these 5 questions. You can play back the tape if you didn't get them down. And then what I want you to do is very simple. I want you to pull a problem out of your life, something that's a challenge right now. And I want you to run yourself through these 5 questions and write down the answers. Don't just answer them verbally. I think what you'll find by the end is you'll not only have solved your problem, but you may have created a new opportunity for a lot more fun. Play with your problems, enjoy them, and grow from them. I look forward to being with you again tomorrow. Till then, live with passion.